Okay, well, today is May 2nd, 2023, and this video, I think what I'd like to talk about in this video is a concept that I had several years ago, like a decade and a half ago, or almost 20 years ago, about 18 years ago roughly, an idea that I'll call a societal aggregation factor, or societal aggregation factors. And what they would be is sort of like an extra paycheck that would come from the United States government regarding how well students do. The easiest way to think about it is teachers. So teachers would get their normal paycheck just like they always do, but teachers will have hundreds or thousands of students throughout their career. And depending on how well those students do, I think it would be worthwhile for the U.S. government to assess a societal aggregation factor, so that the more that a specific teacher, an individual teacher, the better that their students do, the more that teacher will collect throughout the years. In other words, you might consider the students, how many of those students that this teacher taught go on to have a very high income. That might be one factor. How many of these students that teacher taught go on to murder somebody? That would be a second factor. How many of the students that this teacher taught go on to commit suicide? How many of the students that this teacher taught go on to win a Nobel Peace Prize? So what I'm getting at is, I think we're at a point where the U.S. government could use income tax information regarding students, previous students, so that they can assess and can collect a whole lot of other information too, so that they can assess just how valuable a teacher actually was throughout their career. Now, what does this have to do with bus driving? I think you could do the same thing with your bus drivers. I think everyone would agree that teachers are worth more than what they actually bring home from the school as their income. Bus drivers, I would have to assert, are very much like teachers, worth more than what they're bringing home. So why am I bringing this up in the context of bus driving is part of the way that I first came up with this idea was when I first learned that the state of Illinois, where I live and work, the state of Illinois uses a law that says the school bus company that bids the lowest is the school bus company that has to get the contract. And immediately when I heard that, I was working for my previous school busing employer. Immediately when I heard that, the image of a conflict of interest popped into my mind, and the image that popped into my mind was Hustler's Barely Legal, where you've got this, what seemed like an unending flow of new talent, probably being exploited, paid less than they're worth. Anyhow, I don't need to get into that too much. But I have to go into my previous employer. With regards to my previous employer, it seemed that there were people, managers, who were in the business for reasons other than the safety and well-being of the students. And what I figured was going on was that these managers who were deeming something more important than the safety and well-being of the students were trying to get students kicked off of the big buses so that they could employ more, so that the school bus company could employ more bus drivers to drive the smaller buses. If a big bus can it typically carries about 50 people, it's got a higher capacity than that, but typically you would limit it to around 50 people if you could, so that the people are comfortable sitting in 2 to a seat instead of 3 to a seat. So if a big bus is typically going to carry 50 people, but you can get 3 people kicked off of that bus and put onto a smaller bus, well, now you've got a whole reason to hire a whole new bus driver. So you've still got your big bus employed, and now you've got another employee driving a smaller bus to handle those 3 people that got kicked out. You also have more influence over those 3 people because you've got one driver who's talking with and influencing 3 people instead of 50 people. Part of the reason why I think it's important for me to bring this out is we've seen January 6th. We've seen how a large portion of the United States feels very upset with authority within the United States. And with my previous employer, they knew full well that one of the easiest ways, one of the fastest ways to turn a person into a behavioral disorder, one of the easiest ways to create a behavioral disorder with a student is to make them feel that they've been treated unfairly. And repeatedly with my previous employer, it seemed evident that there were managers, it still seems evident that there were managers who wanted to create a sense that that the students are being treated unfairly, knowing full well that if they feel that they're being treated unfairly, their behavioral disorders are going to skyrocket, which means you get to take them off of one bus and put them onto a smaller bus. What I'd like to see is bus drivers being rewarded for doing an excellent job with their students, not necessarily by being paid extra from the bus company, but being paid extra through some kind of a check that comes directly from the government over time. In other words, 20 years down the line, the bus driver will be eligible for more income, or next year the bus driver will be eligible for more income because his students are doing well in school, are progressing well in school. Kind of like piggybacking on the idea that I just described earlier about the teachers. So that you'd have a disincentive for a bus company to have managers who try to create a sense amongst themselves that there's unfairness. Again, let's go back to the lowest bidder has to get the contract. To me, that's, now that I've seen January 6th happen, it doesn't have to be hustler, barely legal anymore. The first image that popped in my mind when I first heard about it. Now it could be Russia, it could be China, who's financing a school bus company to come here to America, they're going to pay a little bit, they're going to pay out of their pocket so that they can influence the school children, so they're going to pay out of their pocket so that they can bid the lowest, get the contract. Once they've got the contract, they can influence the students who are riding on the buses to make those students feel that they've been treated unfairly by the authorities who are running the school bus. But they're not going to just associate. Part of their association is going to be that authority in general sucks. And if authority in general sucks, then American authority sucks. And we can see right now that there's a lot of Americans who genuinely believe that American authority sucks. And what I'm trying to do is create a way to ensure that that doesn't happen again. So, like here's a video. My video editing software messes my phone. If I try to put my phone videos on my video editing software, it messes up the voices. So let's see if I can find. Here was me apologizing for. Here's a short that I put up where I apologized. Now this is a recreation. This isn't actually me apologizing to the students. I did that the day prior to making this video, this short. The video that ended up being this short. So let's see if I can play this. See if I.
So I just want to apologize to everybody for having been late yesterday. Good bus driver leaves early enough so that if something happens along the way, it doesn't affect you guys, the passengers. And yesterday I didn't do that. So just want to apologize.
Okay, so that's a video that I made of that's a recreation video of an actual apology that I made to my students the one day that I ran roughly 12 minutes late. To them it would have felt 12 minutes late. In actuality it was 7 minutes late because I tend to run my route 5 minutes early. But to them, to my students who I made that apology to, it would have felt like I was running 12 minutes late on that day. And what I'm trying to get at is, if you've got bus drivers who are able to convey to their students that they genuinely care about the well-being and safety of the students, I personally think that the students who ride on that bus driver's bus are going to flourish. They're going to have a tendency to flourish more frequently than if they're riding on a bus with a bus driver. And on that video I shouldn't have said bus driver, I should have said route driver. Because, see, there's another thing that's unfair. A route driver has a relatively easy job compared to a substitute driver. A substitute driver has a much more difficult task on a daily basis because they might run a different route on a daily basis, and yet, which means that they're relatively unfamiliar with what they're running, and yet the substitute driver isn't going to get the Christmas gifts that the route driver is likely to collect around Christmas time. The rapport that the regular bus driver, the regular route driver, creates with the parents who see him on a daily basis is generally going to be more uplifting than the rapport rapport that's built with a substitute driver, not because the substitute driver is a worse driver, but because the substitute driver is under such a much higher cognitive load that he has to deal with. So in this scenario that I'm describing here, there should also be, in the scenario of societal aggregation factors, a substitute driver should also be compensated extra for having been a part of what enabled the route driver to do his job. It's just an introduction, but if there's anyone out there who can forward this video to a senator, a good senator who knows how to write laws and write legislation that can possibly anything that can inspire a legislator to try to come up with a second income that comes directly from the government, I think it would be a good thing if you can forward this video to that kind of a senator. I think that's all I'm going to try to say with this video. I hope it made sense to you. I know it makes sense to me.